Hello boys and girls, Itai here. We are in another Embraer video. As I used to be an Embraer captain in the US, I see fitting to just show you a little bit of the techniques here. I am using X-Plane 12 and the X-Craft Embraer 175 version. I don't remember the actual version number, but it is the end of October 2024, whatever version is current. We're in San Diego, California, and I want to show you today a max performance or minimum runway length takeoff. So without further ado, let's jump in and let's see what I've got set up over here before we take this thing to the air. So here we are in the cockpit. Everything is pretty much set up, I think. Now, in order to do a max performance takeoff, there's not much we need to do. So I'll start by saying all the overhead panel is set up pretty much like I would for any normal flight. Why am I emphasizing this? Because in order to achieve a maximum performance takeoff, first of all, if we can avoid anti-ice use, we would. So that's set up not through here, but that's not set up through here. So the first thing is anti-ice. The other thing is pack and bleed usage. So we would prefer for a no ECS takeoff, so no bleed takeoff. What would be different though is we would use the APU for that. So that's the only thing that I probably missed here. So let's get the APU started. We got the APU FADEC, and now the APU is coming on. Now, why am I doing the APU on and not messing up with this panel here? So the overhead is going to stay exactly the same with the APU on and the ECS panel exactly as it is in auto modes. Why? Because the rest is going to be set up through the MCDU, the MCDU. So we would go to takeoff. Let's go. So from Perfinet, it would be the takeoff data set. We would use takeoff 1, ADIX on always. Ref ECS is going to be off. So that stays just like that. Anti-ice is off. We don't need it. It's 13 degrees Celsius outside, so we don't need the we can see that here as well, so we don't need the ref anti-ice today. And takeoff temperature is going to be 13 degrees, what we do have outside, but with, of course, no flex. We don't want to reduce the engine thrust, and without all of that, we're going to hit enter. Now the bleed APU valve is on. Let's see if we can actually see what it looks in the ECS panel. So the system logic should have cut off the bleeds, and have the APU feed the packs, and in this configuration. Nevertheless, that's what we're going to simulate. So I'm going to actually do the actions that we would in real life. So here's the takeoff init. And if we go to the next page, we're using flaps 4. Flaps 4, so we go here and select the flaps 4, obviously, and it is set. Takeoff 1, and flex is off. That's exactly what we want. Takeoff, we have the speeds here. The trim is set up to 3.0 up. Flaps 4. Takeoff pitch initially is going to be 12, and we already hit toga. So the takeoff procedure, that's all the setup. So I would do that at the gate, right before even starting the engine. And then I got the flaps 4 set, the trim is set, everything is pretty much set. And then I would taxi as I normally would, get to the runway, and as I'm about to take off, it would feel like a very normal takeoff. The only thing is, I'm going to use a lot of thrust, basically all I can out of the engine. I'm barely using any bleed air out of, well, I'm not using the bleed air out of the engines at all. So it basically, that entire pressure is going towards thrust, so the acceleration is going to be pretty strong. And because I'm using flaps 4, and look at those low speeds, that allows me to rotate at and lift off at very low speeds and using very low amount of runway. The caveat to using flaps 4 is I am using shorter runway length, but the caveat is comes later because it takes a lot more time to accelerate. So first things first, flaps 4, my initial climb gradient is going to be slightly lower, and accelerating and getting the flaps up would take me longer as well. So if the issue is climb gradient after takeoff, if I have plenty of runway but the issue is climb performance, I would not use flaps 4. I would use flaps 2 and even flaps 1. But if my issue is the runway length and I don't have any problem climbing after I've lifted off, that's when I'm going to use flaps 4. The ref ECS off, that's just the way to squeeze as much energy as I can towards thrust and not towards the ECS, while the APU, that's the one that's using the air towards the ECS. Without further ado, let's release the brakes and let's pretend we are clear for takeoff. So we got all the lights on. Let's give them the flight attendants 2 ding-dongs. And that's a good time to take off. The only difference between flaps 4 and flaps 2 or 1 in the acceleration is I just need to count from 4 to flaps 3 to flaps 2 to flaps up. That's all. The rest is just normal, and I will show you exactly how it looks. So brakes are off. Let's get the engines to 40% and to 40 and 1 and stabilize, and pushing the throttle up. We got takeoff and auto throttle engaged. ECS is engaged, and we are rolling. Thrust set. Hold 80 knots. That's checked. And here it goes. V1, rotate. How's the rate? Gear up. And look at that. That's a maximum performance takeoff for you. Let's get the autopilot on because it's not a demonstration of how well I'm flying this. As we get to 1,000, climbing on to 5,000 eventually, we're going to start accelerating. Here we go. Takeoff changed into Fletch, and here we are accelerating. I don't know exactly where the bug... Well, the bug is way further than it should be, so let's go flaps 3 now. And I'm tracking it here. Flaps 2. And flaps 1. And flaps up. And we're climbing at 210 and at least, well, 210 until 3000. That's when we're going to accelerate to 250. Fresh out of the clouds, we got flaps up, gear up, which means the only hint why we cannot do the after takeoff checklist is because we still have the APU on. So that's a good point to get the APU to off. And as soon as the APU would be off, we can run the after takeoff checklist. And here we go, after 3000, accelerating to 250. The flaps and gear are up, so it's safe to do so. APU is shutting down eventually. And that's how you do a minimum runway takeoff in the Embraer 175, 1000 to go. Thanks for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed it and learned from it a little bit. Do let me know what you think, and if you have any other techniques you would like to see, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.